In our first post-Ishishasha hurricane video, let's first take a moment to thank the small but highly irritating group of people from Florida, of course they're from Florida, who felt the need to hunt down my personal email, not the one that I give everybody on this channel to send me all kinds of things from dictures to questions, all that. Took a time. Look at this hair is getting so out of control. My pen is getting caught in it. Look at this is just. I look like, you know, when the Little Mermaid needed a fork. What did she call it? A dingle hopper? That's what I need, a dingle hopper. I know I've helped the comment section out an awful lot with that one. Please keep your dingle hoppers in your pants and don't send them to me as a JPEG. Okay, anyway, so let's thank the people. Maybe we'll write like a little note. Dear people of Florida, thank you so much for hunting down my personal email, which is kind of creepy, yeah. To name drop hurricanes that you have survived, that you have endured from the comfort of your brick, drywall, 4x4 studs that are 16 on center inside a house that you have survived, that you need. And this is what people in Hurricane Alley do. They name drop. Well, I was in Hugo when I was at, like, no one cares. I wrote a list of all the things that's how much I care. I made a list that you survived in a house, and therefore me being in a rig going through a category 1 was nothing compared to what you've endured. I really enjoyed reading those, and I think I might have made a couple people cry in my response, but yeah, I mean, like, come on. That's no comparison. Being in a hurricane house, being in a hurricane rig, two very different things. But Florida, the people in Florida will tell you they have been through some shit, and boy do they want to let you know. Actually, we have a lot of people from Florida who are full-timers on this channel, and they're badass. It's just that little enclave of humans who need to let you know about how they feel about all of your personal life choices that have nothing to do with them. But so the hurricane and all that kind of inspired what we'll do this week, and it is a terribly boring topic, just dreadful, not exciting, but we're going to spice it up with some profanity like we usually do, and some Casey Roman stories, which you always get whether you want them or not. And like some other channels, I'm not going to give you the time codes of when you can skip to the actual information. I'm going to make you suffer through every God-blessed sentence that comes out of my mouth, because I can. And good news is some of you saw YouTube has finally put the ads back on this channel, because they should have never been gone in the first place. And so to those of you that watch those, I really do appreciate that. I know that they are not fun to watch, but they do help me out. That 3 cents that YouTube gives me for them is like, it is, oh, I'll show you what it did today. I bought brand name ketchup. It doesn't have sugar in it. I paid extra for that. I paid extra for the thing that is not going to come in it. So I just appreciate y'all so much. Okay, let's rock and roll. The hurricane reminded me of all the times I got screwed trying to have vacation time working in TV news. In TV news, you're not allowed to take vacation in July, November, February, May, and July. Yeah. Those are ratings periods, and that's when companies that we pay too much money to watch what you're doing, like how long you stay on a channel, how many times you click through, how many commercials you watch, and then it's called the ratings period, Nielsen ratings period, and then they send that report to the TV stations that base all their advertising charges off of it, so no one is allowed to go on vacation during that time period, because that's when we set the standard for how much money the TV station makes. That's why you also will see like new TV programs come out, usually in November, is because it's ratings period. Anyway, so it was really selective when we could take vacation, and then every single year from August until October, hurricane after hurricane runs up our ass here in North Carolina. So it was just, I was eternally having my vacation ruined. So I started looking into travel insurance. That's the topic of this video, travel insurance. I know, it's sexy. If I maybe could form cleavage and talk about travel insurance, here, I'll just pull this back. And so, look, clavicle, bills. Does that do anything for you? I don't care. Again, a list of all the things. Don't care. All right, this is actually good information though, because whenever you talk about travel insurance, people will say, oh, it's bullshit, you know, they rip you off, da da da. Typically, when people say that about insurance, it's because they never read the policy, or like here were their ideas about the policy, but like here was the actual policy. And insurance, though, is a contract between you and a company, and a contract is legally binding. So if they promised you A, B, and C, they can't renege on A, B, and C. The problem is you were expecting X, Y, Z, and they gave you A, B, C, and now you're writing some shitty review online. That won't change your outcome, but that's what you're doing because you can. I use travel insurance, and I'm a huge fan of travel insurance, and I typically do not buy really big insurance policies because I self-insure, meaning I save up extra money to cover any kind of loss. But I do use travel insurance. A couple years ago, I had this mega trip planned. Ooh, I was going to go, you know, solo trip, right? There's no Mr. Roman. I was going to go to Rome and Barcelona and Portugal. Multi-country trip, lots of flights, lots of those little European flights. I mean, I worked for months to set this thing up. I saved up so long to make it happen. And right as I was getting close to my trip, Hurricane Irma formed, and she was like dead on Wilmington. And I had never used travel insurance because I thought the same thing everybody else did, that it was just totally bogus. So I called a travel insurance company and I told him what the deal was. And he said, and here's your first lesson, once the event has been named, you are SOL, you are shit out of luck. So once a hurricane is named, they give it life, usually now in some gender neutral name that nobody can pronounce, like Ishi Shai Shai. You cannot get insurance to cover you for effects of that storm. And the same would go for any other kind of event, like a terrorist attack, anything. Once it exists and it's been named, you cannot then insure it. And that makes sense, right? Because if it was the other way around, everybody who lived on the East Coast would wait until the very last moment when the storm was right off their back porch and then buy the insurance and take all the claims. That's not going to keep them in business. So that's the deal. Number one, you cannot get coverage for a storm after it has been named. Irma had already been named. And so I understood that, and that made sense to me, and I didn't think that that was bogus on their end. And I said, man, but like, is there any option I have? I'm so worried that I'm going to have to work through the storm. And if I have to work through the storm, then I can't go on my trip. And he said, oh, well, actually, if you get this plan, there's a work clause in it that if your employer will write us a letter that you had to work, that you could not go on your trip, then you can get coverage. I'm like, that's perfect, because in TV news we have something called an all hands on deck policy, which sounds like we're going to a picnic. It's really just a way to fuck you out of all your vacation plans and like totally void your safety if you wanted to actually evacuate. But if that plan gets put into action, nobody goes on vacation, nobody goes anywhere, everybody's working until the next storm. So we talked about that, and I ended up buying a comprehensive plan, pretty much the top tier thing. It was only like $125, but my trip was close to $3,000 because of the plane ticket and all the little flights and all that. So I was like, $120, $3,000, like, I was totally fine paying that, especially with Irma roaring in our direction. Okay, so no name storms, and then also, and I'll say this a couple times, you have to keep all your receipts. Every single penny that you spend or your claim is not going, they're not even going to look at your claim. So I went back and I got everything in order, and he told me that. I filed all the receipts, I put them away, done. Irma came, and it ended up not being a whole lot of anything, but because of the policy, I couldn't go on my trip. I canceled everything, and then I had to go through the whole rigmarole of getting my money, and I'll wait until a little bit to tell you what happened, what the process was there, because it's not particularly what you might expect. However, I use it. I've looked into, I almost got a policy for the babe bus, but right now, everything that's going on with coronavirus, the world seems like it's flipped upside down. If you are going to be traveling at all, if you can travel at all, I really think this is a smart thing. None of the travel insurance companies have sponsored this video or nothing like that. If you were someone that I cared about, like not that group of people from Florida, but other people, I would absolutely recommend it. So I'm going to go through some of the things I've learned about travel insurance to keep you from screwing up on this. And so that actually, if you do have to make a claim, you will get your money back and then not be like one of those people who's just bitching about it on the internet, okay? And I have some notes, so I'm going to have to refer to those over here. All right, so there are three major types. You have medical insurance. I think we know what that covers. You have comprehensive, which is like the big kahuna plans. That's what I always get. And then sometimes comprehensive is called walk-away insurance. And then you also have annual insurance. Annual insurance is if you travel a lot. Like you are going away for business, you are always on the road. I looked at an annual insurance policy for the babe bus because I knew I was going to be away for a while. And with my business insurance and like some other policies I had, it didn't particularly make sense. But those are not terribly expensive. They're like $300 for the year. And you get an awful lot for $300 and it's being stretched out over the course of a year. So I mean, I think it's actually a pretty good deal. It could give you peace of mind for nothing else, right? So number one reference, what I was saying before about name storm, is you have to have enough time. Actually, you have to have a short time between when you made your first big purchase or deposit and then when you bought the plan. And as time grows between when you paid for everything and when you bought the insurance policy, the less you're going to get or be offered from that insurance policy. So when I am booking a big trip, the moment that those plane tickets are paid for, I buy the insurance policy. Because when you buy the insurance policy, the first thing they ask you is, when did you make your first purchase for this trip? They want to know on their end that you were already thinking about protecting your investment when you bought the investment, and that there's not something that's like screwy going on where you pretty much know you're going to cancel the trip and they're going to have to pay a claim, right? They don't want to pay a claim. They will pay a claim if you follow the rules, but they don't want to. So if lots of time goes by, you're not going to be able to either get a policy or much of a policy. And pretty much they want it to be within 21 days of that first deposit. So that's how long you have. But most people don't do that, and this is where they get screwed. You know, they bought everything back in May, and then in September, right before the trip, try to buy a policy. And there's very little that's available to them, if anything at all, and chances are their coverage is not going to be great, or they won't actually get covered if they have to file a claim. So, right when you start to book, that's when you want to get your plan. Okay, again, named event. Once the named event is there, actually insurance companies have this square for hurricanes, and once it's named, any state or country or anything in that square, nope, you can't buy a policy now. Sorry. If you didn't have flood insurance and you're in this square, you can't buy it now. So you've got to do it beforehand. Okay, number two, they do not buy enough. They don't buy enough. If you buy a single plane ticket, it's going to cost you a fortune. So everyone tries to buy insurance based on the cost of the premium. And whether it's travel insurance or like health insurance, like with Obamacare, people were getting screwed left, right, up, down, and across, upside down, diagonal, every way with Obamacare because they were buying based on the cheapest monthly premium. Not even looking at the fact that the cheapest monthly premium correlated to a sky-high deductible, and so when they actually had to use their policy, they couldn't use it because they couldn't afford the deductible. Come on, all right? If you buy very little on the premium end, you are going to get very little on the coverage end. So I was more than happy to spend $125 for full walk-away coverage, meaning I was going to get everything back if my trip was canceled for one of the reasons listed in the policy. And you've got to read the policy. Okay? So don't try to cheap out on that. There's just no point then. If you're going to buy like an itty bitty policy, I mean, you might as well just take the loss. Right? All right? And again, hold on to all your receipts. Okay, number 3. Some countries actually do require, and I would think now more than ever, that you have some kind of traveler's insurance before they let you out of customs. I don't have a comprehensive list of this, but it did come up when I was doing my research that people had gotten to a country, they get off the plane, and they get to customs, and they needed proof of traveler's insurance, and they didn't have it, so they had 2 options. 1, buy the super expensive state-sponsored traveler's insurance, no thank you, or 2, get back on the plane and go home. No, so they end up spending too much money. All right, so if you're going to travel abroad, and this may not be terribly helpful right now because very few people are, some people are still traveling for work, you want to know what happens at customs. And so you may actually have to call customs or make some kind of reconnaissance mission to figure out if you're going to need one, okay? Your cruise company, oh, my cruises right now, you could not pay me enough to get on one of those floating Petri dishes. I don't care how many midnight all chocolate buffets you have. No. But I would call and make sure, because right now a lot of trips are getting canceled, and so if the company requires it, you've only got that 21 days. So just double, triple check on all of that, all right? All right, trip cancellation. To fully cancel the trip, you know, sometimes insurance has like, it's just for luggage. If they lose your luggage or your luggage is stolen, or trip interruption, that's another type of insurance where if something happens and you can't go take that tour, or you can't make that leg of the cruise and things get shuffled around, you get reimbursed for that chunk. But full cancellation, which is what I was staring at with Hurricane Irma, is typically relegated to a major event. And so that's going to be like a death or an accident, or in my case, if I had mandatory work and could not actually get on the plane. But you, like, if that's what you're thinking, if you're worried that you're going to have to cancel the whole thing, like, you need to know that somebody gonna die, or that you're gonna get into an accident, or like that whatever it is you think could be the trigger for cancellation is actually covered, because they typically are limited. That said, the insurance provider that I use, last time I checked, they did have walk-away insurance, which means you didn't even have to give an you didn't have to answer why. If you just didn't feel like getting on the plane, if you just didn't feel like going on vacation, you could fully walk away from the trip and they would pay for it. I'm going to guess there's probably like a lot of fine print there, but if you read the fine print, you know what the fine print is. I ended up getting 100% of my money back. So I paid a whole lot more, but for 125 bucks, I got back 3,000. Happy camper. Happy camper. All right? Okay. Cancel for any reason insurance is typically going to be obviously more expensive. You're looking at like 10% to 15% of the value of your trip. Most travel insurance, like the basic policies, that's going to be 5% to 10% of your trip. And you want to read where this is, you have to know you're canceling and file that cancellation prior to 48 hours before leaving for the trip. And that was a huge issue when Irma was coming, because my boss was waiting for the absolute last minute to put in the all hands on deck. And I flat out told him, I said, listen, man, I've got $3,000 on the line. So either my ass is working this week or I'm getting on that plane. And he was like, well, maybe you can go. And I'm like, make up your damn mind. So he ended up issuing the policy, and then I was able to use it. But if it's 24 hours out, sorry. Again, just read it in the policy or ask them. And also record the phone conversation. When I'm buying something like that, I have like my little audio recorder so that I know exactly what was said. Exactly. So that they can't tell me that, you know, the agent told me otherwise. Nope, nope, nope. Okay, let's talk about what happened before I go into number 5 on the kind of aftermath of filing my plan, because while I am telling you that like it was great, I got all my money back, I was so happy customer, in reality it took about 6 months. Because it was a named storm, and so when I filed my claim, they rejected it initially, and they said it was a named storm. And so I had to go back and forth with the claims department. I had to send 2 letters from my boss. I had to send a letter from the general manager. I had to send the email that initiated the all hands on deck to prove that I was filing not because of the storm, but because of the workers' portion of the policy. And everyone's situation might be different there, but just know that it's not going to be a quick turnaround to get your money. I had to send in all the receipts. I had to add up everything. I had to fill in like the carrier of each airline, and I had like 6 plane tickets because I was doing all this jumping around, all the flight numbers, on and on and on and on. It is going to take a while to get your money back. But if you get rejected and you damn well know that you were covered, there's a process to do that. You have to appeal the claim. It's just going to take forever. In the end, I got every single penny back, but damned if I didn't work for it. When you make that initial phone call, so when I do it and I'm like recording the phone call, they're going to give you all kinds of options, like, well, you could do the platinum plan, or, well, you could do the gold plan, and like, I don't like listen to any of that. I just tell them what the most important things that I want on my policy are, and then tell me the plan that fits that. And so I'll flat out tell them, it's a flight heavy trip, so I've got a lot of money in flights. I'm concerned because it's hurricane season that I'm not going to be able to make it on any one of them. And I don't want 50% coverage, and I want 75%. I want 100% coverage. This is what I want. Or if I'm traveling with all my camera gear, I'll say I need whatever policy covers the most value, the maximum amount for if somebody steals my luggage or breaks into my hotel room. So I'm not going to listen to all the other plans. I tell them exactly what I need and tell them to match a plan to that, because they can do that by adding different riders and addendums to like custom fit a plan to me. And so then they'll do that, you know, if you just tell them, and then they'll spit you out a price. But that way I know that the most important things for me are getting covered. I typically don't say I'm worried about a terrorist attack, because if there's a terrorist attack while I'm traveling, chances are my problems are way bigger than me making the next flight. Okay? So customize it, just tell them what you want, and then have that recording and don't get rid of it. Okay, let's talk about luggage claims, right? Because not everyone is so worried that their trip is going to get canceled, but luggage disappears, especially if you're in other countries. It can get stolen out of your room. I was really nervous about going to Rome because there's a lot of petty theft, there's a lot of crime on tourists. So just know this, and it's in there, it's in the fine print that nobody reads, is that typically any kind of luggage, coverage, anything like that, they're assuming standard things found in luggage. Your eyeglasses, your contacts, your clothes, maybe your passport, shoes, things like that. What they're not including in there in practically any policy is all the stuff that you actually want to insure, okay? Your super expensive camera, like when I travel. Your jewelry, your heirlooms, they're not looking at that. If you bought expensive stuff in some other country and shoved it in your luggage, like that's not going to be included in there. If you have expensive items that are extremely valuable to you, you either need to ship those back, to carry them on your person, hold them in your hand, or buy a separate rider just for those items. And there's all kinds of insurance that you can buy for individual. An insurance company will write you a policy for just about everything that you want, but you have to understand the limitations of policy A before you go out and get all these riders. So I have what's called an inland marine policy that covers all my camera gear. It's a $0 deductible. So if someone steals something from me, I get back not the depreciated value of my gear, I get back the value to replace it. And I'm not quite sure why I haven't paid someone to steal some of my gear now that I say that out loud. Because honesty and integrity is important. But I understand that my travel insurance is not going to cover all of my expensive camera gear. So that's why I have this separate inland marine policy. And you may need a policy just for your jewelry or whatever you have. But the luggage thing, they're assuming standard stuff found in a luggage. They're not assuming all your bougie bitch travel accessories, okay? Medical insurance. Let's say you don't want comprehensive medical insurance or a comprehensive travel plan. You know you're going to go on this trip. Nothing can stop you. So let's say that you just get like a medical plan because you have pre-existing conditions or you're worried that something might flare up or whatever. Medical insurance came into play for me when I went to, the first time I went abroad, which was to Chile. Probably not the best place to go abroad by yourself when you're in college, but like, you know, can't hurt steal, right? Grr. Okay, it's like, it's not even anything anymore. I need to get back in the gym. I'm not totally cleared for working out again post-surgery. I can almost make expressions, but not yet. Actually, the fact that I can't furrow my brow and scowl at people. I remember a couple years ago, some like group of researchers doing some really low-level bullshit research. They found that women who got excessive, like heavy-duty Botox to where they couldn't make expressions had lower rates of depression because there was the signal of I'm mad here to their brain or I'm sad to their brain, like it was cut off. So they were like happier. And I've been like this for about a month, where everything that we've done like in here has just, you know, concreted my face, and I still don't like the strict majority of everyone that I meet. So I maybe should call them and say, hey, I've got something you could study. I have resting bitch face like you would not believe, and it's not soft shit for me. All right. Anyway, medical insurance. I went to Chile by myself. I naively thought in college that most places spoke English. As it turns out, they do not, especially in rural Chile. I went to the city of Valparaiso. Valparaiso used to be very wealthy. Beautiful, beautiful. And then they built the Panama Canal and cut off all the trade to Valparaiso. All the ships would stop there, and it plunged into poverty. And so now it is poverty like you cannot even imagine. Little tiny cobbled together shacks. And it's all up this side of the mountain. And so if you're wondering, well, why in the hell would anybody want to go to an impoverished hellhole, I'll remind you that I love Detroit. Totally different. It's because on all the retaining walls that hold up this menagerie of slums, the locals have painted this beautiful mural artwork on the retaining walls. And so while it is true destitution, like no running water, no electricity, no nothing, there's all this beautiful art, and I really wanted to see it because I thought, oh, you know, there's so much poverty, but they're making the best of what they have. So I get to Valparaiso. I speak no English. At the time, my hair was like bright blonde. Not that I would blend in this way, but I stuck out even more then. And I get off the bus, and I spend my whole day walking around, and like I had one of the, it was a while ago, right? This point and shoot camera that it was like 3 megapixels, and it was top of the line. That tells you how long ago it was. So I'm going around taking all these photos, and then I started to make my way down to the plaza. And at the center of the city, down this big mountain of destitution, is this big, beautiful plaza with all these shops around it. And on the way down, I stopped at the graveyard, and the graveyard had those raised tombs, and it was just, the statues were beautiful. It was really interesting. It was like the graveyards in New Orleans. And I'm taking these photos, and as I'm leaving the graveyard, I just got the sense that other people were coming out behind me, but I didn't think that much of it because it's a really busy city. And I'm walking down now, and I can see this huge plaza, and it's filled with people. I mean, just packed with people. And the road down to it off the mountain is this large, wide cobblestone street. And I'm walking down, and I'm like about to come out into the plaza, and I hear the sound of feet running behind me. And I don't think anything of it because there's children all around and there's people all around. And because I knew that petty theft is like pickpocketing, right? It's not assaulting a female. but I had read in Lonely Planet that petty theft was a big issue. So I had this teeny tiny backpack that I wore in front of me and I clutched like this, that had my passport and a little bit of cash and my bullshit tiny camera. And I walked around like this because I knew that petty theft was an issue and I was not going to be a victim of petty theft. Instead of being a victim of petty theft, I got to see what was behind door number 3, which was assault. Yes, the next thing I remember, my face was slammed into that cobblestone street. Ow. If you've ever talked to someone who has been the victim of violence, assault, or like a first responder who gets shot at, they'll tell you that time slows down and everything warps, and that is the truest thing in the world. All I could see when my face could get off of the cobblestone was it was a group of teenage boys just kicking and punching the absolute shit out of me. I don't even remember feeling anything, to be perfectly honest. I do remember how scared I was. And they were all, like, you know, working on assaulting this part of my body as I laid there, like, getting pounded into the street. But I looked up, and I will never forget his face, and I remember how clenched his teeth were. He had my bag, and he was pulling my bag as hard as he could, and I was gripped onto that bag like it was my child because my passport was in it. It wasn't the camera. I knew that if I lost that passport, that I was screwed. And I was in South America, and I had no idea, like, how I would get myself back out. And I was holding on the bag for dear life. If I'd let go of the bag, they probably would have run away. But instead, because I held on, they kept beating the shit out of me while he kept trying to get the bag. He finally gave up, and they all ran away, and I grabbed that bag, and when I finally got back up onto my feet, I mean, everything was just like, the whole world was spinning. I probably had a concussion, and I remember looking around this plaza filled with people. I mean, there were hundreds and hundreds of people. And everyone had circled around me like it was a fucking arena. And nobody moved to help me. And I later learned that this kind of crime is so prevalent in Valparaiso that the locals don't want to be involved, so they don't do anything. So I got the shit beat out of me while hundreds of people watched, and all I remember is that I was screaming uncontrollably. I didn't know what to do. I was like panicking. And I just kept screaming and screaming and screaming, like holding this bag and like spinning around and like not sure if they were going to come back out again and attack me. This is why Casey carries guns and knives, ladies and gentlemen. One of many reasons. And a little old woman came out from the crowd, and I'll never forget, she kept going, "Tranquilo, tranquilo," like, shut up, shut up. Luckily, the day before, sometimes God sends angels in advance. The day before, I had walked into a bookstore to get some relief from the sun, and the man behind the counter spoke English, and I was like, oh my God. I mean, I had been there for 3 weeks, and I hadn't had a conversation with anyone. He was from Virginia, and I was so happy to see him and have somebody to talk to, and he was an expat, and so when I finally got my bearings, I ran straight to that bookstore and like crumpled on his floor. I was heaving and like having a panic attack, and he scooped me up and put me in the back of a patrol car, which police, as much as I love them in third world countries, are shady as hell. You usually have to bribe them. And they took me to a hospital that was nothing more than a giant gymnasium where the beds were like this. And I was still screaming and having a panic attack. So these nurses, I couldn't communicate to anybody because I didn't speak Spanish. These nurses held me down on the bed and like stuck the needle right in my ass. No idea if it was a clean needle. And it was some kind of tranquilizer because I shut up pretty soon after that. And they checked me out, and, you know, I didn't need stitches, but I was bruised and bloody. They washed all the blood off of me and then sent me back out on the street. Anyway, the moral of that story is that is an instant where you're not thinking that that's going to happen, but if I had been at some kind of country that didn't have, like, some little shithole community medical clinic, the insurance would be a huge issue, and that would have probably held up my care. I mean, that's what this was. It was like some little like community paid for clinic, and so I didn't get held up on all that jazz. I also really didn't need anything. I needed Tranquilo juice, and I needed the blood cleaned off of me. But shit like this happens. not only that, like that's an extreme case, but if you have issues, if you have medical issues, if something happens and you need them to be treated, it's not going to be like here in the US where you just walk in and like throw your insurance card down and go see your doctor. I mean, it's going to be a process, and sometimes you don't have time for a process. So you can buy travel insurance that is specific to medical issues. Here's the thing. You have to tell them in advance what your pre-existing conditions are. They're going to want to know what to anticipate. If you don't tell them what your pre-existing conditions are, and if they have not been stable for a look-back period, meaning you've not had any flare-ups, it's not getting worse for like 60 to 180 days prior, if you don't give them all that information and something happens on the trip, they're not going to cover it. Also, sometimes I know like trip planners, if you go on the prefab trips, you have to have it. Like you have to have, or they will provide for you some kind of medical travel insurance plan. So, you know, you might not have to get into an MMA fight with a bunch of teenage boys in the street, but most people, especially as they get older, have some kind of medical issue. Insure the damn thing. Just insure it. It's not that expensive, and will save you a lot of time if you're out somewhere and you need to get medical help ASAP. Okay? Okay. Oh, and also know if you don't want to get like a specific, if you're very healthy and you don't anticipate any issues, if you buy one of those comprehensive plans like I buy, just know that emergency medical care typically comes in it. So if you had an incident like I did, that would be covered. You know, if you have diabetes and you don't tell them about it and then you have some kind of issue, that's when they'll be like, yeah, no, you didn't tell us about it. Okay? Also check for exclusions. Those are always in policies. So before you go running with the bulls or skydiving or jumping off a bridge and bungee jumping, if you have any accident related to that, chances are it's in the exclusion policy section and they are not going to cover it. So like I don't buy trip insurance when I go to Detroit because I'm going to be running around abandoned buildings. I know they're not going to cover that if I go through a floorboard. So I don't really feel like I need that. I feel like if you go to Detroit, you're signing up for what you're signing up for. Plus, I have all their merchandise, so I'm hopeful that even the violent criminals won't want to mess with me. I'm like Detroit's biggest fan. You can't fuck with me. Plus, I have guns and knives now, okay? Contents. Oof, biggie. This is, a lot of people get screwed on this one, too. I always look at the contents of a travel insurance policy because of my camera gear. Where people go wrong is they're like, oh, well, my homeowner's insurance covers it, or my auto policy covers it. I would call your homeowner's insurance or the car or the rental insurance policy and ask them, hey, I'm going on a trip to XYZ, and if something gets stolen out of my rental car or my hotel room, will you cover it? Like, straight up ask. Because while people will tell you that they will, especially renters policies, so for some reason people think that renters policies, if someone steals something out of your rental car, that they'll cover it. I have never ever called in my homeowners, renters, and autos for anything travel related and that they'll agree to pay for it. Typically for contents, personal items, they're insuring what's in the building or vehicle that they're insuring. So your vehicle insurance policy is only going to insure the contents that were in your vehicle, not your rental vehicle in Madrid. Nope. And typically your renters and homeowners is only going to cover in the building that you insured, not your hostel or hotel in China. I mean, if you find that, I wouldn't let go of that policy. I've just never seen that actually prove true, despite what people say. Also, you'll hear people say like, oh, my credit card covers that. Well, they might. But the thing to do is to call the credit card company in advance. Do you cover any medical? Do you cover any cancellation? Do you cover lost items? What do you cover? I have a specific credit card that I use for travel, that I get points, all that. And I have that credit card isolated for travel because it comes with a slew of coverage benefits. Specifically rental car. You know, they always try to upsell you on the rental car. And I don't need it because I've already talked to that credit card company in advance and they're going to cover anything on the rental car. But I would not just assume that because you've heard that credit card companies have it. Straight up call them and ask. And make sure if it's petty theft or if you get in an accident or something like that, whatever your biggest concern is, that they're actually going to cover it. I do not buy when you buy an airline, a flight, and then at the end they're like, for $17.99, you can get total cancellation coverage, all that. If you actually go in and read those plans, there's about 8 different ways to screw you written into them. I don't bother with that. And they'll tell you like, oh, you cancel for any reason. Nope. I stick to a separate independent party for my travel insurance that is not related to in any way the airlines, because those are so shady and there's so many clauses in them. At least with my travel policy, I'm getting any kind of cancellation, I'm getting the emergency medical, and I'm getting some contents coverage. I'm not going to waste $20 on something where, you know, they'll tell you, well, we'll give you a flight on, you know, some day in a year from now, or we'll give you a discount on another flight. Like, no, I don't need that. Buy that if you want. I don't. All right, so that is everything that I have learned, experienced, dealt with travel insurance. I have never had an issue getting my money back, except for if there's some confusion and I have to go through the claims process. But I have never been denied any money that I thought I deserved. And so some companies are better than others. Call a bunch of them, compare the plans, but for the last time, you have to buy really close to when you make those original purchases. And at this point, I would also ask them, what is your COVID policy? Because especially for RVers, the parks are all full. I mean, all across the country, like, the parks are full. So I would make sure that that any kind of COVID cancellation, you know, what if you get to, you're traveling and the state shuts down, like New York, now restricts people from your area coming in. Well, you would want to ensure that leg of your trip. So ask about COVID, make sure that you tell them exactly what your trip is about, tell them exactly what the concerns could be. You won't be allowed in the state, you won't be allowed to stay, you're worried that the country on the other side of the world is going to put in a travel ban, then you can't get on the plane. Tell them specifics and they will get you a policy and save the damn receipts. Okay, the final note for today that is insurance related but isn't exactly homeowners insurance related. It is something that affects homeowners and specifically RVers or vanners. When you go out for a very long time, like if you have one of these, 3-month, 6-month trips from your home, I was going to do a separate video on this, but it's not something I can talk about enough to warrant a whole video. If your home is vacant, unoccupied, for more than 60 days, you probably are going to get denied on any kind of claim. Here's why. When homes are abandoned, they, on an insurer's perspective, are now more likely to be targeted for vandalism, for break-ins, burglary, squatters, all of that. So after 60 days, your ability to get coverage on a claim is like really close to zero. So if they can prove that you left your home unoccupied because you went out on this big RV trip or you did a big like around the world cruise and you weren't there, and it's not going to be hard for them to figure out if that was the case because they have all these adjusters and underwriters and everybody else who can easily pull up your social media. Okay? So if they can prove that you left your home unoccupied for 60 days, they're going to deny your claims if any of those bad things happen to you because they feel like they're insuring the home and you left it up to risk that they didn't know about. And so here's how you get around that. Either one, call all your friends and family and your neighbors and make a regular appearance inside, turn on the lights, picking up the mail, cutting the grass, all that stuff so it doesn't look unoccupied. Or two, buy the separate rider. If you tell your homeowner's insurance on the front end, we're going on a 6-month RV trip, we're not going to be around, we do have someone that's going to check on the house every once in a while, you can buy additional insurance. If you do it and something happens and you don't tell them, they're not going to cover it. So I'm not talking about vacant. Vacant is there's nothing in the house, the power's not on, it's just an empty house. Unoccupied, you live there, your name is on the deed, but you have not shown up and you've left the house to be. That's when you're going to get screwed. So, you know, go one of two ways. I don't think the riders are terribly expensive. The moral of this story is the more information you give up front about what your plans are, what you're doing, and exactly what you want coverage for, the easier this is going to be when you actually have to file one. And I'll say, when I was buying my travel insurance, I was like, oh, you know, I don't know, like, Irma's kind of far away and things have changed, like $125 could be admission into something I want to go to on the trip. And then I just waited and I thought, if something does happen, I'm going to be kicking myself in the ass because I didn't spend $125 to secure $3,000. And in the same way, if you're going to be away from your home, shithead crackheads can do a ton of damage in very little time. And so, like, is it worth it? I don't know. I'm all about saving money, but I also really like peace of mind, and if I'm going to be on a trip across the world, I am all about having that peace of mind and just not having to worry about it, which is why I like the walkaway insurance. That way, no matter what happens in my life, if I have a hurricane, if there's a terrorist attack, if I have to work, whatever it is, I'm going to get my money back. And I know that because I did my homework on the front end, and we communicated it, and I might have recorded the conversation. Okay. All right, well, I hope that was helpful to y'all. We're going to do another live chat soon, maybe next weekend. I've not decided yet. What would be helpful is if you could give me some suggestions about the topic for the live chat. I don't remember what I did last time. It was so long ago. But if you just want to do general questions, if you want to talk about van conversions, if you want to talk about RVs, you know, some kind of theme that would help me at least like get the conversation going. I don't want to do what I see other YouTubers do, which is they just start it and then just wait for someone to ask, you know, a question about, I don't know, what's their favorite kind of ice cream. Because the only acceptable answer to that is chocolate ice cream with peanut butter swirl. And anything less than that, you may not be an American. So, there. Now I already answered that one. Alright, weirdos. Live, learn, insure your shit. Bye.